Hello, and today in Christian Worldview, we are discussing the ethics of displaying Confederate monuments, particularly on public ground. So this starts with the Jefferson Davis statue being removed in New Orleans. So Jefferson Davis served as the president of the Confederate States during the Civil War. He's one of the most recognized people associated with the Confederacy. The city of New Orleans removed a statue of Jefferson Davis as a part of a plan to take down a total of 4 Confederate monuments displayed on public grounds. Confederate symbols like statues, monuments, and flags are a common thing all over the southeastern part of the United States, and in recent years, many cities and states have begun to remove these symbols. So what do these mean to people? For some, these symbols carry hurtful connotations, and for others, they represent the heritage of the place they live. So here's our big question. Is it ethically permissible to display Confederate monuments on government properties, such as the Jefferson Davis statue that was recently removed in New Orleans? Let's find out. So here are some arguments in favor of keeping Confederate monuments. It's a matter of preserving history. Some supporters believe that the history of the Confederacy has been misunderstood over time and misconstrued to mean something else. The people that are offended should educate themselves further on the history of the Civil War. For some, the history of Confederate symbols have been tainted since they've been used by hate groups and not used as a representation of Southern pride. Confederate symbols like the Jefferson Davis statue represent heritage, not hate. Many people feel they honor the valor and sacrifices of soldiers who fought and died in the Civil War. They represent our history. The Civil War was not just fought over slavery. The war was also fought over the very nature of government and a state's right to govern itself. Southern heritage is being proud of beautiful land, food, music, and culture, not just the Civil War and slavery. There are also many arguments to remove Confederate monuments. They are a painful reminder of a history that many people would rather forget. The strongest argument against preserving Confederate symbols on public grounds is that the symbols represent hate to so many people. Southern heritage arose during a time when African Americans were treated poorly and were believed to be inferior to white Americans. It was a time when they were treated poorly and they experienced terror. The Jefferson Davis statue and other Confederate symbols simply divide people and should come down in order to try to erase the memory of slavery from history. Confederate symbols belong in a museum, not on public grounds. After all, abolition was a product of the doctrine of human equality. So what is our important issue here? The theological and moral question here is whether love will be extended to our brothers and sisters of color by removing from their view a symbol of anguish, enmity, and terror. As Christians, we're instructed to love our fellow man and not to intentionally cause harm. As a country, things that have happened throughout history have caused pain. Can we continue to cause the hurtful memories to come to light? Here we present 2 contemporary solutions to the problem. So we're talking about removing versus leaving the monuments where they are. So one solution would be to remove the Confederate monuments from government property. The second solution would be to leave the Confederate monuments where they are. So for solution 1, we really have to ask ourselves, what message is the government really sending to the public? The monuments should be removed because in the minds of many people, these symbols send the wrong message to citizens despite what the meaning may have been in the past. The Christian worldview would support removing anything that would cause hurt to our fellow brothers and sisters. Christianity holds that God directs us to love Him and each other. Now, many believe we should leave the monuments where they are. The monuments, after all, represent history. This history could include the sacrifices the soldiers made and the hardships that were endured during the war. Students today are immersed in stories of genocide, slavery, oppression, and segregation. The history of America is taught as a series of sequence of power struggles between the oppressor and the oppressed, and not taught as a progressive grand chronicle. So, what is our conclusion? Our conclusion is that it is ethically permissible to take down the Jefferson Davis Monument. While the statue deserves to be a remembrance of history, it shouldn't be on government property. There are museums for Confederate memorabilia to put the monument on display. Our own state of South Carolina has a personal connection to this issue. We're talking about Dylann Roof. Dylann Roof murdered 9 African Americans at a church in Charleston, South Carolina, in which he associated his hate with the Confederate flag. After this, officials from South Carolina passed legislation to remove the flag from the state capitol building. So now let's discuss some social and worldview influences here. So some social views could be perceived as removing the monument as a positive step. This monument, along with other Confederate symbols, can hurt a state's economy. For example, the NCAA might not bring tournament games to a state. It could also keep tourists away from the city to visit because the monument offends them. This, in turn, hurts the state's revenue. For many, the monument symbolized hate, slavery, and bloodshed. With a Christian worldview, we are here to love one another. Loving one another means showing compassion for all. As a Christian worldview, we should not knowingly cause harm or pain to our fellow Christians. So here's our theoretical approach to our ethical decision making. So a teleological approach would be the best to describe the decision of taking down the monument because it was such a bad time in history filled with hate. It was morally ethical to take the Jefferson Davis monument down. We should not hurt others by honoring leaders of slavery. Taking down the monument was morally correct since it caused so much anguish and terror. So what is our final decision? The final decision for the monument to stay down helps people to move towards making things right for a better future. It helps to put the past behind us. It helps to close the racial divides between us. The monument being down helps it to not be a constant reminder of slavery. If monuments continue to divide us, then they should be removed. We need unity in order to move forward with love and compassion. Thank you for listening today, and here are some of our references for further viewing.